And everyone, and welcome to week 9 of Marketing 2700 Design and Product Development. I'm Brad Scheller, and this week we're doing something that would have been science fiction 5 years ago. You've built prototypes in this course now. You've tested them with real users, but real market research, the kind where you test your concept against hundreds of representative consumers, normally costs $15,000 to $100,000 and takes months. Today you're going to do it in a week using AI. We're going to build a synthetic persona panel, 100 or more AI-generated consumers that statistically represent your target market, and run your product concept through multiple research methodologies. This is not a toy exercise. Bain, McKinsey, Procter & Gamble, NielsenIQ, they're all investing heavily in this technology right now, and you're going to learn it before most professionals in the field even know it exists. So here's the problem in product development. Traditional market research is insanely expensive. A single traditional concept test with a reputable firm, NielsenIQ, Ipsos, Kantar, runs $15,000 to $100,000. Focus groups, $8,000 to $12,000 per session, and it takes weeks to months. For a startup or a small team, that's basically inaccessible. So what happens? Well, teams skip research entirely. They build on assumptions, and the data shows that's a disaster. Roughly 80% of new products fail, and the number one reason is that nobody validated whether anyone actually wanted the product or service. Synthetic persona research does not replace traditional research for high-stakes decisions, but it gives you something incredible, a rapid, cheap first pass. You can test 10 concepts in a day for the price of a lunch. The MIT Horton study showed treatment effects from synthetic data and experiments correlated at 0.85 with real human data for about $50 in compute time. Let's take a moment to talk about the actual science because you need to know what's credible versus what's hype. The landmark study is from Stanford and Google DeepMind, Young Sung Park's team in late 2024. They recruited over 1,000 people, interviewed each one for 2 hours, then created AI digital twins using GPT-4o. Those twins matched their human survey responses at 85% accuracy, which is roughly the same rate humans match themselves when retaking the same test 2 weeks later. That's remarkable. At MIT, John Horton coined the term Homo silicus, silicon human. He showed large language models could replicate classic economics experiments with results statistically similar to human subjects across nearly 500 experiments for about $50. In an industry, EY validated the platform Evidentia against their annual CEO survey and found 95% correlation in a double-blind test. But, and this is critical, accuracy drops hard when you move from attitudes to actual economic behavior. Pricing research, willingness to pay with real money on the line, about 60% accuracy. And large language models systematically flatten minority opinions. They produce a homogenized average that misses the diversity of real markets. So the bottom line, powerful first draft tool, not yet a replacement for human research on high stakes decisions. But things happen fast in this emerging AI world. So is this just some fancy theory? This isn't theoretical. The money is flowing. Yo Sung Park, the lead researcher at that Stanford study, co-founded Simile and raised $100 million in Series A financing. His angel investors include Fei-Fei Li and Andrej Karpathy, two of the most important figures in AI. Aru, backed by Accenture Ventures, reportedly hit a billion-dollar valuation. Now, at the accessible end, Synthetic Users charges just $49 per 100 respondents. Ditto, a Y Combinator company, offers 300,000 census-calibrated personas across 15 countries, and the big market research firms aren't sitting still. NielsenIQ launched their Basis AI screener specifically for CPG companies. Taluna built over 1 million synthetic persona from their real panel of 79 million people. Procter & Gamble is the furthest along. They deployed virtual consumer simulation across 30,000 employees through their internal ChatPG platform. Target's COO discussed synthetic audiences on an earnings call. This is happening now, and within 5 years, it'll be a standard practice. Getting comfortable with it now gives you a significant career advantage. Now, here's where our Crossing the Chasm framework from Jeffrey Moore's becomes directly relevant. When you build a synthetic persona panel, you need to represent all 5 adopter segments, not just the ones you wish were your customers. A common mistake is to build a panel full of innovators and early adopters because those are the people who would be excited about your concept. Of course they'd love it. They love everything new, but they're only 16% of the market. The real question is, will pragmatists, the early majority, adopt this? Will they see enough social proof? Will the product be complete enough? And what about the late majority and laggards? Your persona panel must represent the standard distribution, 2.5% innovators, 13.5% early adopters, 34% each for early and late majority, and the 16% laggards. When large language models simulate these segments, they actually do quite well with innovators and early adopters. Those have distinctive, well-documented behavioral profiles, but they struggle more with pragmatists because pragmatist behavior depends heavily on social proof, which is context-specific and harder to simulate. This is actually a known research gap. Nobody has formally connected synthetic persona simulation with Moore's framework yet. You could be among the first. Now, in this week's team project, here's the 5-phase pipeline you'll be using. Phase 1 is the strategic interview. Claude asks you about your product, your company's innovation strategy, your target market. It needs to understand whether you're doing a disruptive innovation, a platform play, or a derivative product, because that shapes which consumer segments matter most. Phase 2 is the competitive landscape scan. It searches the web to understand your competitive environment, maps out competitors, and assesses market difficulty on a 30-point scale. Phase 3 is market modeling. This is where it pulls actual census data for your target geography and builds the demographic blueprint: age, sex, income, education, political lean, employment status, and others. It layers on psychographic overlays, including the Rogers diffusion segments and Moore's Crossing the Chasm segments. Phase 4 is persona generation. It builds 100 to 500 unique persona, each with 23 attributes, including name, occupation, income, brand affinities, pain points, values, media habits, and a personality brief that makes them feel like real humans. Phase 5 is research simulation. You run your concept through 7 different research methodologies. The whole thing is packaged as a Claude Code skill that you're going to download from GitHub and install. In this Claude Code skill, you have 7 research methodologies available, and each one answers a different strategic question. The concept reaction survey is your quick and dirty first pass. It gives you purchase intent, uniqueness, and relevance scores across the whole panel. Behavioral simulation is more sophisticated. It actually walks each person through the 5-stage decision journey: awareness, interest, evaluation, decision, post-purchase. Conjoint analysis, powerful for feature prioritization. It presents trade-off scenarios and reveals what your personas actually value versus what they say they value. The Van Westendorp pricing method is fascinating. Each persona is provided 4 price points, and you aggregate them to find the optimal pricing range. But notice the accuracy warning on pricing. This is where synthetic research is weakest because LLMs struggle with real monetary trade-offs. JTBD interview simulation uses Clayton Christensen's job to be done framework to uncover underlying motivations. For your project this week, I'd recommend starting with the concept reaction survey for a broad signal, then conjoint for feature insights, and perhaps behavioral simulation for a deeper understanding. Run at least 3 methods to triangulate your findings. If you can do all 7, that'd be great. So here's exactly what your team needs to do this week. Step 1 is download the Synthetic Persona Lab skill from the GitHub repository linked in Canvas. Install it on Claude Code. There are step-by-step instructions in the assignment page. Now, if you don't have Claude Code set up, now's the time. Step 2, run the strategic interview. The skill will ask your team questions about your product concept, your innovation strategy, your target market, and your competitive landscape. Answer thoughtfully. Garbage in, garbage out applies here more than anywhere. Step 3, generate your persona panel. Based on your answers, the tool will recommend a panel size, probably 100 to 200 persona. Review the demographic breakdown to make sure it looks reasonable for your market. Step 4, run at least 3 research methodologies. I again recommend starting with the concept reaction survey for a broad signal, then picking 2 of the other ones to match your team's biggest strategic questions. Step 5, write the executive research brief. This is your deliverable, 4 to 6 pages synthesizing what you learned, how different segments respond, and what your team recommends based on the data. This is not just a data dump. I want strategic thinking, and this is due Sunday night. So for your executive research brief, let's talk about what makes a strong executive research brief, because this is a career skill. In the real world, executives don't read 50-page research reports. They read the first page, skim the recommendations, and ask questions. Your brief should be structured so the executive summary alone tells the complete story, the concept, the key finding, and the recommendation. Everything after that provides the evidence. The methodology section builds credibility. If someone questions your conclusions, this is where they look. Show that your panel was demographically representative. Explain why you chose the research methods you did. The findings section is the meat. Present the data clearly, highlight segment-level differences, call out surprises. The segment analysis is where you connect to Moore's framework. Which adopter groups showed enthusiasm? Where's the resistance? Can you identify a beachhead segment? And the recommendation section is where you earn your grade. Don't just restate the data. Tell me what your team should do differently based on what you learned. And include a limitations section. The fact that you can articulate what synthetic research can't tell you demonstrates intellectual maturity that employers value. And here's what I want you to take away from this week. The ability to orchestrate AI for market intelligence, to build representative consumer panels, run multiple research methodologies, and synthesize insights into strategic recommendations. This is a skill that barely existed 2 years ago and will be at table stakes within 5. You're not just learning a tool, you're learning a capability that will differentiate you in any organization you join. The students who treat this as a checkbox exercise will get the grade and forget it. The students who actually engage with it, who think critically about what the data means, who push back on the limitations, who see this as a superpower for their careers, those are the ones who will look back on this class as a turning point. The AI-based research services market hit $8 billion last year, and it's projected to reach $35 billion by 2035. You're getting ahead of that wave right now, so take it seriously, but have fun with it, and bring your best thinking to the executive brief. Now, go build your panel, and I'll see you next week.